Hello everyone, and welcome to coverage of Grand Prix Paris for the MSEM format. I'm Caillou, and today we're going to be watching the round 4 match between Chumbeque, who is on MonoWhite Tempo, versus Cyber Chronometer, who is on Grixis All-Train Venomoth, which is, you know what, I'm going to just accept that I'm going to take up the start of this video by explaining that deck name because it's a fun reference. So, if you've ever heard of Twitch Plays Pokemon, one of the Pokemon in that was a Venomoth who ended up getting named ATV, as is the case with essentially the Twitch Plays Pokemon fandom. The lore around it grew, and it essentially became called All-Terrain Venomoth as kind of an expansion of that acronym. And in Monsters of Chikyu, one of the reason sets, we can actually see it here, there is a reference to it, Scuttling Gnat, which flips into Vicious Metamorph, which has protection from dragons as a reference to that. But then you might be wondering, okay, then why is the name of this deck All-Train Venomoth and not All-Terrain? Well, we don't see it right now, but one of the key cards in Cyber's deck is a card called Last Stop, affectionately referred to as Force of Train, which is essentially 1 black and a red, deals 13 damage to target creature, it loses indestructible, but you can cast it without paying its mana cost if it targets a creature with power 5 or greater, and you also control both the swamp and a mountain. Very powerful combo with Vicious Slasher, because you can attack, give a blocking creature or a creature that an opponent controls Winnow, and then cast Last Stop on it, dinging them in the face for, actually now that I think about it, I don't think it's 13, I think it's 11 damage. And it's also just very tempo-efficient removal, allowing a Cyber's deck to function a lot like classic Delver decks, which Scuttling Gnat is very reminiscent of Delver. So the line that we missed on turn 1 was Cyber played a Vicious Slasher, but it got countered by Invalidate, one of the few white counter spells that we have that allow Chumbeque's deck to be mono-white tempo. Chumbeque then tapped out for an Ethereum Abrogator, one of the more powerful hate bearers in our format, which just got added with Alara a few months back. Cyber then responded with our most powerful aggro threat, Plasma Addict, which is a 3/3 flying haste with a downside that is usually negligible, but sometimes isn't. Chumbeque is going to tap out in turn for a Guard of Cuirassiers, which can block and trade with the Plasma Addict. Also has a second one in tow, Tiny Heroine Toddy to potentially be able to gain life and start searching up stuff, and Ostracizer Orb, which notably, because it is an artifact, its ETB does not get shut off by Ethereum Abrogator, so it's just basically a 2-mana O-Ring in this matchup. Cyber, meanwhile, has a good assortment of lands, but also Weed from Chaff into Scuttling Gnat is a powerful curve. Cosmic Sinkhole is good interaction, and Bitter Duckling is a really disgusting value engine. This also flips into Night Song Swan, as seen here, which is essentially just, what if we had Labman, but it also generated you card advantage and milled you cards itself, and was 2 mana? Of course, it's not as crazy as I'm making it sound, but it's still quite good. And there we go, Last Stop, the card I was mentioning, looks like it is 11 damage, yup. There's also Inishtu Desert Healer, another one of the powerful threats that this deck faces. So you're already seeing that this deck has a pretty varied threat suite, and all of them are strong in their own right. They all either like Plasma Addict, they're just straight good for damage dealing, or they focus on milling cards for extant value while also beating face. So Cyber did cast the Weed from Chaff there, which is basically careful study, but you also investigate. Cyber is going to try and swing in for 3 again, going to put on the pressure. Chumbeque is just going to take it, surprisingly. Maybe Chumbeque is hoping to untap Ostracizer Orb, but I don't think that you can really rely on that. Okay, and then Cyber is going to tap out for the Bitter Duckling right there, which next turn is likely to be online. Mills 2, a Crystal Cavern, and a Bitter Duckling. Cyber discarding the 4th land actually seems a bit weird to me, because if you discard, if you kept the other land, it does enable next turn Cyber to go Scuttling Gnat plus Last Stop, but I guess Cyber values being able to just have more gas in the form of having Initiative around and being able to start scuttling that plus Initiative next turn. And then just assuming that last stop, if ever, is probably going to be cast as a force if needed. Which I'm not sure you can reliably say given how low on power all of Chumbeck's creatures are, or maybe just hoping to hard cast it on a future turn. But yeah, Chumbeck's now going to have to run out the Ostracizer Orb on the Bitter Duckling because it's a terrifying value engine. Is going to swing for 5. I guess it's going to try and outrace Cyber, which at this point is actually distinctly possible, given that Chumbeck also has Tati to gain life, Guard of Cuirassiers, and Ethereum Abrogator as more threats. But here's the combo. Vicious Slasher plus Last Stop is a combo that will just dome Chumbeck for 11 next turn, and will definitely kill Chumbeck, given that this Plasma Addict is getting in this turn. So yeah, I think that play Vicious Slasher and play Initiative is like a pretty reasonable line, because Initiative flips next turn. Vicious Slasher also threatens to just combo kill Chumbeck. You're putting multiple threats onto the board, all of which Chumbeck can't answer because that's just how Chumbeck's deck works. Chumbeck's deck, the entire point of Chumbeck's deck is that it's tempo, it's not control. It doesn't have those wipes. And it's hoping that it has the board control, but Cyber's like, nah, actually I'm going to have the more impactful threats here. Yeah. And oh no, we're going to have a judge call because Cyber forgot that Ethereum Abrogator turns off Initiative's ETB, and therefore, and Cyber did the Surveil trigger. So that's going to have to be a judge call, which I'm not going to lie, on commentary alone, I have forgotten Ethereum Abrogator like 4 times back to back, so I completely don't blame Cyber. It's one of those cards that's very just awkward to remember. Okay, so we're continuing. Cyber just had to shuffle their library, and I believe it was a game rule violation for Cyber. So getting 3 of those results in, I think, a game or match loss, so not super great. But it is the last round, so as long as Cyber avoids making any other mistakes, should be smooth sailing from here on out. And after attacking with the Plasma Addict, is going to play the Vicious Slasher. And this opens up the just kill you next turn line. This may be where if Chumbeck top decks a counterspell, okay, no. If Chumbeck had top decked a counterspell, then Cyber not keeping that land there would have been very painful, because then that means that Chumbeck could just counter the last stop, because Cyber wouldn't have a mana to pay for the taxing counterspell. Wow, Chumbeck's swinging for the hills even when down, or when close to death. So, okay. Okay, and he's going to run out the Tiny Heroine Tati. And I guess the idea is make 2 ground blockers with the +1. And yep, but now is all tapped out with nowhere to go. So Cyber just swings in with the Vicious Slasher, and last stop exactly domes Chumbeck. Also, Cyber forgot to flip their Initiative, but it is a May trigger, so it doesn't really matter. And boom. That's Chumbeck's last stop, folks. So we're going to game 2. Okay, so let's look at sideboarding to see what Chumbeck can do out of the board versus Cyber's deck. Mortal Pilgrimage is basically Chumbeck's anti-aggro sideboard card. It sucks so badly versus the Plasma Addicts, but versus every other threat in Cyber's deck, it can mana efficiently answer them, so I think that's an easy bring in. Shikai's Readout as free Grave Hate is also pretty great in this matchup, given that Initiative, Scuttling Nat, etc., all want a nice critical density of cards in a graveyard, which you can shut off with Shikai's. Helena is actually not bad versus ground attackers, but once again kind of sucks versus your flying Plasma Addicts. So I think all 4 Mortal Pilgrimages and then some number of Shikai's Readout are definitely coming in. The Helena is like a flex slot and depends on how Chumbeck wants to play the matchup. I could see them coming in instead of the Helvalas, but Helvala does just allow you to speedrun some games, so it comes down to preference. Meanwhile, on Cyber's end, looks like they've got the 4th last stop in the board, probably versus decks that have less interaction. Some interaction of their own. Reign of Ruin, Rogar's Gambit, Spell Stutter. I honestly cannot evaluate what Cyber would want to bring in here, maybe nothing at all, if I'm being honest. I think the Reign of Ruin is potential, just because if you fall behind on board. But everything else, I'm just like, Cyber's main deck seems relatively teched out already. So that's my feeling on sideboarding right there. Looking at hands for game two, Cyber kept this? Oh no, it looks like Cyber hasn't kept yet. But this is Cyber's 5. We missed their 7 and 6. And this is an awful 5. Oh no, Cyber's keeping at one land. Honestly, given Cyber's curve, I honestly think that you would be better suited just going to 4. But I guess Cyber does have 2 playable cards here. Meanwhile, Chumbeque is also, I just looked at Chumbeque's hand, is also keeping a one-lander. Has Unlikeliest Heroes, which can buff along with the Invalidates. So Cyber's going to run out the Vicious Slasher, I guess under the impression that next turn can Scorch and kill the Unlikeliest Heroes. Oh, and there's a Helvala, which is basically dead for a hot second for Chumbeque here. And really needs to get a second land to be able to turn on these Tal, Ostracizer Orb, Ethereum Abrogator, etc. Meanwhile, Cyber drew a second land, but since it isn't a blue source, can't cast this Wheat from Chaff, which is the really important thing. Well, fortune favors the bold, so it seems like Cyber did draw a blue source, and I think that the easy play here is just you Wheat from Chaff, draw into stuff, see what you get, but I think you probably just keep the last stop to be able to dome Chumbeque with, and then just go ham with whatever else you have. Okay, he's going to attack first, putting Winnow on the Unlikeliest Heroes. So probably Wheat from Chaff, and then Scorch the Unlikeliest Heroes, which will also deal 3 to face. So yep, going to Scorch the Unlikeliest Heroes, keeping up a mana to counter and invalidate if need be, which is smart. Now can play the Wheat from Chaff, and I honestly think that you want to do it to bait out counter magic here. Oh no, okay. I guess the thought is wants to keep both Last Stop and I would have to discard Last Stop. Wants both Last Stop and a Mountain because wants to be able to Vicious Slasher. So I guess the idea is save the Wheat from Chaff when you have cards that you actually want to ditch, like that Swamp. Meanwhile, Chumbeque is in full damage control mode. I'm surprised. I feel like if you're Chumbeque, you tap out for Ostracizer Orb there, but was probably scared of a Cosmic Sinkhole, which is our format's Force Spike plus. Okay, Cyber once again being very conservative, just going to run out the Wheat from Chaff here. Plasma Addict plus Rogar's Gambit. I think you ditch the Swamp here, and then you're cool with having more burn, and yeah, this is fine. This is entirely fine. And then maybe you ditch the Rogue's Gambit? Yeah, okay. And then you keep the Plasmatic plus Last Stop as good threats / general. Okay, and Cyber attacks in for 2 more. Chumbeque is 1 life off of being in what we call Last Stop range. And that is another 3-drop which Chumbeque can't cast. Chumbeque's just going to run out the Ostracizer Orb here. So Vicious Slasher combo is offline, but next turn Cyber can play a Plasma Addict and then get under, or still have a mana up to be able to counter the Invalidate, which is castable off the Sunrise Parry, which I think is pretty strong. Looks like Cyber did bring in the Reign of Ruins. Okay. And yep, running out the Plasma Addict. Once again, Cyber's curve is so cheap that it's running circles around these Invalidates. Chumbeque's just going to run it out for the hell of it, I guess. I don't know if making Cyber tap that 1 mana was worth it, especially since it wasn't a blue mana, so it's not like it's keeping Cyber off of Cosmic Sinkhole or something. And there's a 3rd land, finally. I'm going to tap for Tati? Okay. Tati and then maybe +2? Yeah. Just going to gain back that life. Plasmatic can just start ganking it very early, though. And another Last Stop would really like this Ostracizer Orbed Vicious Slasher at this point. The Plasmatic is a little awkward. I could see Oracle's Vision here. The problem is if you cast Oracle's Vision, any 2-drop you play, is Invalidate bait. Chumbeque is tapped out. Chumbeque didn't untap the Sunrise Parry. So yeah, Oracle's Vision into trying to hit another threat is big money. Okay, so mills a Vicious Slasher and 2 more Reign of Ruins, and draws another Oracle's Vision. Very unfortunate because that Vicious Slasher is basically exactly what Cyber wanted there. Well, no time like the present to spin the wheels a little bit more. Mills a Plasma Addict and 2 lands. And there's the Vicious Slasher. Miracle Draw? Question mark? But yeah, I think now you play the... Okay, yes. Plasma Addict swings at Toddy to prevent her from being able to -4. Mm-hmm. And then Vicious Slasher comes down to be able to just kill Chumbeque if Chumbeque ever decides to play a creature ever again. Okay, 4th land. Helvala's online, but yeah, again, if Chumbeque's only like actual threats here are the Tal and Ethereum Abrogator, and Chumbeque just dies if he plays those. So you're gonna drop... Oh, wait, Tal can tax instants. Tal can tax instants! No! Tal named sorceries, so the last stop isn't taxed. Oh no. Jeepers. I think probably by law of probabilities that was the right play, but oh man. Oh man, oh man. So now Cyber just attacks. On attack, you give Winnow. You wait for the trigger to resolve. Before blockers, you kill one of them. You get... And then Chumbeque will be down to 1 health and can't block one of the creatures. So I think Cyber just wins here. Oh wait, no. Chumbeque has the Invalidate. Chumbeque untapped the Sunrise Prairie. Oh no. I guess Cyber can still do it all over again next turn, but that makes it a lot more tense, especially because Chumbeque has a Toddy and both of the creatures, well, and they're on even life totals so far. So, but yeah, I think if you're Cyber, you just have to go for it, honestly. Like, force them to have it, and then you force them to have it again next turn, is essentially the logic. Okay, so Cyber is swinging in, going to give Ethereum Abrogator the Winnow. Notably, is swinging at Toddy and not face, which I guess is now fine, because Chumbeque lost a life to untap the Sunrise Prairie. And there's the attempt to run out the last stop, but yeah, Chumbeque has the Invalidate, so survives another day. But the Ethereum Abrogator is going to block the Vicious Slasher. Toddy goes down to 1 loyalty. Chumbeque takes 2. Both of these die. Okay, so Chumbeque is now going to run out the Helvala. Swung in with Tal plus the Angel. Puts Cyber down to 1. And now Cyber is in a bit of a bind, because needs Plasmatic to block this, needs something to be able to block Tal or kill it with the Rogar's Gambit. The problem is the Angel can also spawn another Angel, so you actually need another flying blocker. Yes, I don't think Cyber has any outs here. Cyber's out is deal as much damage to face as is humanly possible, but as much as humanly possible is currently... Is there another Gambit? So you can Gambit, Reprise... No, actually... No, all of Cyber's lands killed them other than... So Cyber can do 5 damage and then dies. And yeah, Cyber just concedes there. So we're going to a game 3. After what risky keeps from both players and what looked like game for Cyber. But once again, that having cheap cards definitely helps Cyber, but also not having... The result of a deck built with the idea of having cheap cards in mind is I won't need that many lands. And therefore it's easy for just 1 turn to have 1 less mana than you need to, and then boom, Invalidate Blowout. Okay, so getting into game 3, Cyber has a hand of... Okay, so both players keeping. Cyber has a hand of some decent turn 1 plays, Scorch, Oracle's Vision, Wheat from Chaff, into Haymaker 2 drops. Looks like Cyber's going to run out the Oracle's Vision turn 1, just getting as much mill as possible. And mills 3 good cards off the top of Chumbeque's library as well. You always love to see that. Meanwhile, Chumbeque has a Disseminate, which is always strong when your opponent has to tap out on 2, and also a bunch of good 2-drops. So whatever Cyber plays here, it is going to get insta-ganked by Disseminate. But I guess it doesn't matter if Cyber keeps drawing explosive value 2-drops. Is lacking a red source, notably, but with this blue and black source can play all of the cantrips in their deck, so Cyber should just be able to essentially draw into a red source at some point. So yep, Disseminate is just going to eat the Bitter Duckling. Exiling it is also a plus for not counting subsequent copies, but Cyber then, if Cyber is allowed to resolve next turn's Bitter Duckling, could flip it the turn after that. Okay, Tal from Chumbeque, naming sorcery again or instant this time? Yep, sorcery again. Does tax out these cantrips to an obnoxious level. Because if Cyber had drawn a land there, would have been able to go Initiative plus Weed from Chaff or Scorch. Unfortunately, it was not the case. So Cyber's just going to go Bitter Duckling number 2. And once again, this mana screw from both players, but it's going to hurt Cyber more because it's going to mean that Cyber doesn't have extra mana to pay for potential counter magic or disseminates. And yeah, next turn, Weed from Chaff puts Duckling at flip level. A third land for Chumbeque right on time, going to tap out for the second Disseminate. And now it's a bit of a problem area for Cyber, but can just cast Inishtu and then be like, well, I have threat number 3. Also, Gleaming River can now fetch a red source, which is pretty good in its own right. So yeah, Cyber just going to tap out for the Inishtu, leave up the Gleaming River, potentially just to feign having the Force Spike, the Cosmic Sinkhole. Chumbeque does have an actual Force Spike, though, and essentially just pure gas, so it kind of just comes down to what Chumbeque wants to play here. Probably Ethereum. Yeah, I think Ethereum Abrogator, and then you hold up the Invalidate is probably the best line. Oh no, okay, he's going to tap out for Guard of Cuirassiers. Going to try and out-aggro Cyber at their own game. On end, Cyber's going to fetch up, I'm assuming the red-blue duel. Yup, Crystal Cavern coming in. Not sure why it's coming in tapped, because this is not the tap duel, and Cyber doesn't have any instant speed spells, but that's fine. On upkeep, Inishtu flips, so he's now a deadly 4/5, which with burn to boot. And a fourth land does put Cyber at last stop, not getting countered by Invalidate levels. I think, okay, yeah, so Cyber, and also Cyber has Plasma Addict, which I think you just run into Chumbeque's card and be like, okay, yeah, sure, I'm here. Yep, Plasma Addict arriving on the scene. So you're going to swing for 7. Chumbeque's just going to trade the guard for the Plasma Addict, figuring that Cyber has 3 cards in hand, while Chumbeque has 5, and all of Chumbeque's 5 are gas, so the trade definitely benefits Chumbeque more. Okay, a fourth land will allow Chumbeque to be able to play Ethereum Abrogator and Unlikeliest Hero while still having mana up for Invalidate. And keeping up the pressure, still has a faster clock than Cyber. And yep, Unlikeliest Heroes is also coming down, which just increases that clock even further if Cyber doesn't play something relevant. Another Scorch. Cyber is a ways off from actually being able to kill Chumbeque, so could use this to clean up the board a little bit. Double Scorches to kill Tal. Actually, you use the first Scorch to kill Tal, and then you use the second one to kill Ethereum Abrogator, because that way you can pay for an Invalidate if need be, while if you don't kill Tal first, the second Scorch, you'll have to pay 2 again, and Chumbeque can Invalidate it. See, I can see that as a line to just be like, actually, no, screw your board. See, actually, no, I think you kill Unlikeliest Heroes, because that can grow and be scary, TM. So you kill Tal first, then Unlikeliest. And then Ethereum Abrogator is kind of just there as like, whatever. I don't really care about my ETBs that much anyways. Cyber didn't end up doing anything, and on end, Chumbeque's just going to buff up the Unlikeliest Heroes. Now Chumbeque, on his own turn, can just tap out, buff Unlikeliest Heroes to a 4/4 Vigilance. He's not going to do that, though. He's just going to swing for 6. Cyber is dead next turn to this. Not going to lie, I'm very surprised Cyber didn't just double Scorch to kill the board there. I feel like that's the play. I mean, obviously I have perfect hand information, but even accepting that, I feel like Cyber needs to stymie Chumbeque's clock, and that's the best way to do it. Okay, on end, Cyber's going to pay 3, use Inishtu's ability to drain Chumbeque for 2. Oh, and I think maybe the hope was that Chumbeque wouldn't have another blocker, so Cyber could just go Inishtu, swing, scorch, face, GG. But now, unfortunately, Ethereum Abrogator does exist, so even if Cyber kills that, yeah, this is not a good time whatsoever for Cyber. I honestly think that the best play that Cyber can do here is Wheat from Chaff to try and find the Reign of Ruination, or whatever the Pyroclasm is called. Okay, so Chumbeque is going to block Inishtu with the Abrogator. Smart, because otherwise Chumbeque would have just died. Actually, Yeah, not just died because it had Invalidate, but it would have been very close to dying there. Cyber just passing again. I guess Cyber isn't quite dead on board because even if Chumbeque buffs with unlikeliest heroes, um, Cyber can in response Inish too, but still that does seem quite risky. I suspect the play here is unlikeliest heroes as a chump blocker and then Invalidate, because if you play Guard of Cuirassiers, you can't also play Invalidate because of the anti-synergy there. Yep, unlikeliest heroes coming down. Once again, confounding the double Scorch plus Inish 2 plan. On end, once again, Cyber is gonna... Oh no, Cyber's gonna... Oh no, yeah, last stop is an instant. Oh no, wait, yeah, that just kills the unlikeliest heroes. And then Cyber swings for 6 back, but Chumbeque has the Invalidate for the second Scorch. So Cyber swings for 4 here, and then has to try and double Scorch to win this turn, but Chumbeque has the Invalidate. Unless Cyber is pointing at face. And the Invalidate just wins the game. Oh man. And in a tense 2-1 set, Chumbeque takes it over Cyber. Now, to be fair, both of these decks are still making it into the top cut. But now Chumbeque's MonoWhite Tempo Brew is 4-0 and therefore has better seeding than Cyber's 3-1 finish. Still, they both still have a chance to take it all in the top top X bracket that follows our current Swiss rounds. So, and that was some crazy play. So let's see if in the top 8, Cyber can get the run back on Chumbeque. But until then, this is Caillou signing off.